Hello everyone! Today is Monday, February 2nd of 2015, and this means that we are nearly done with the final week of our Solitary Tarot Solitary Oracle Challenge. So I think for the most part we all are kind of in the flow with working with this challenge, and there isn't too much that we need to kind of clarify in this video. The only thing that I did want to talk a little bit about is working with an intuitive spread, because I think for some of us that can be kind of nerve-wracking, especially if we haven't done an intuitive spread yet. And stepping into really trusting our intuition, as we have been working on for this month, can be a little scary when it's in such a big way, and to not just run back to the guidebook can be really difficult. Especially when we're reading for ourselves. A lot of times it's really hard to trust that intuitive voice, or to discern what is ego or what is fear, or what is the part of myself that downplays my abilities or my worth, or whatever it is, as opposed to the voice of my intuition. It can become difficult to hear that when we're reading for ourselves. And because this spread is a personal spread, you might find that as you step into doing this, it's a little bit scary. So the first thing that I would say to you is just at least give it a try once and see how it feels. And see how it is to read without running to the guidebook right away. If you really just can't stay away from the guidebook, I understand, and go ahead and look at the guidebook meanings, but give yourself at least 10 to 15 minutes with the spread before you run to the guidebook, if you can do it, for those of you who haven't done intuitive spreads before. The beauty of working with our intuition, the more that we do this, it is a muscle, and so even though it is scary and uncomfortable, and we feel like we can't find our voice in all of the noise when we first start doing intuitive spreads, once we get comfortable with it, this is a really powerful, strong, clear way to read. And it's a beautiful way to read energy, and to get comfortable with reading energy as well, and to step into that in a new way. Because the images in the cards themselves are really telling us the story that's happening right now, and the energy that someone is currently in, and the direction they're headed in if they choose to stay in that energy. This applies for when we're reading for ourselves, as well as if we were to read for someone else with an intuitive spread. So really allow yourself to take a step back, give yourself time with the intuitive spread, and if you really go into a fear space with this, only focus on the cards themselves and colors, that perhaps it's colors that you see repeated in the 5 to 7 cards, or maybe it's a certain action, or the scenes themselves in all of the cards is the direction of them pointing the same way. So for instance, if you're using tarot, are there 5 scenes that are depicted, and 3 of them have horses and someone's riding them, and they're all facing the same direction? And then it's about exploring, okay, if they're all facing the same direction, then what are they pointed to, and what does that mean to me as a reader? Intuitive spreads are really about getting to know yourself as a card reader. And I have to say, guys, that now when I do readings for others with cards, I do intuitive spreads. I do not have a set spread that I walk into for someone else. And I have found that it's very freeing for me as a reader, so this is why it's a part of this month's challenge, and it's kind of our grand finale of the challenge as well. Because it's really helping us to get to know who we are as readers, and how we intuit the messages that are coming through, and what our own personal symbols are, as well as the collection of symbols of the unconscious, of the human unconscious, the collective unconscious. So give yourself that time to sit with the spread, and even if you have to walk away and come back later on, feel free to do that. But pay attention to the colors, pay attention to these little things in the cards, and allow that to start to tell you the story of the energy at this time. And then it's about being really honest with yourself about what energy is showing up, because you are reading for yourself with this spread. And it can be easy to only pay attention to what we want to see, or to be so scared that all we can see is gloom and doom for ourselves. So this is where we have to be really honest and very focused as readers and really pay attention to what the messages are that we're receiving intuitively, psychically. And because we've been working with this deck for a month now, you know what the energy of your deck is. And you also know what the card meanings are as far as for you, what the feeling of those card meanings are, and what each card is showing you, even if you haven't drawn some of the card images that show up. You know the feeling of the deck as a whole, and the energy of the deck as a whole, and the purpose that it's come into your life. So really be very honest about that with yourself. And ask yourself questions as you're sitting there as well. Well, why am I so triggered by what this meaning could be? Or why is the color red bothering me so much and I'm seeing it in each of the 5 cards? And okay, what does red mean for me? What is it associated with? What memory is it tied to? And really allow yourself to go back. And so this can be quite a cathartic process. And an intuitive spread typically isn't over in 5 minutes. It's layers and layers that we're peeling back and looking at until we get to the heart of the energy itself in the spread. And telling a story with these images is really how we start to do that, in my opinion, as a reader. So allow yourself to tell the story without running to the guidebook, and allow yourself to peel back the layers. Ask yourself questions, and be very honest with what comes up for you. Typically that first feeling that we get is really that kind of gut feeling that we have for a second before we step into, well, no, the guidebook says da-da-da-da-da, or, well, wait a second, didn't 5s mean something else in numerology? The first thing that we felt, the first feeling that we had is quite often the intuitive hit that we're experiencing. And so it's important to pay attention to that. So that's what I would encourage you to do as you work with your intuitive spreads for this final week of our deck challenge, which is nearly over now. And as far as the fun project, our final fun project with drawing or painting or writing a poem about the deck itself and our work with the deck itself over this month, again, allow this to be fun for you and a way of you keeping a record of your experience. Over the years you can look back at this and it will take you to this time and what this time was like for you. And it can be very poignant and beautiful. So I encourage you to do this practice, this part of the practice, even though it seems kind of silly. Embrace it and have fun with it. For me, I am excited to work with other decks now, as when Thursday comes and I can start working with other decks. And I actually am going to show you some of the decks I'm excited to work with in February. But I have learned a lot from this challenge, and this challenge has really helped me to see where I tend to get stuck in my personal journey and afraid to move forward in my spiritual journey. Spending this long with one deck has really helped me to not be able to avoid those triggers for myself and to pay attention to how I'm responding to any circumstance that has happened throughout this month, and to bring awareness back to just being present and always feeling that connection and that guidance and trusting that it's there and knowing that it's there. But the Sacred Rebels Oracle deck has really helped me to experience that in a very, very powerful way. And I have to say the Sacred Rebels Oracle deck is incredible. It's a life changer. At least it has been for me working with this deck. It's been deeply empowering, insightful. It's encouraged me to live authentically in a very, very strong way. And I am deeply grateful that Alana Fairchild was able to channel this deck for us and that it was able to be put into card form. And I would say to you that if you are interested in working with this deck, it is one that is meant to be used in this type of an intensive way where you're really working with the deck. A flirtation with it is fun, but if you can really have a love affair with this deck, it's going to create major shifts for you in your life if you allow it to. So I'm going to show you some of the decks I'm excited to work with in February, but I would love to say to you all, thank you so much for joining me in this challenge. So many of you have shared parts of the experience for you and how it's been for you. And I have loved reading all of them. I don't always have time to reply right away, but I can assure you that I will try to get to your messages, and I always at least read them. And it's been wonderful for me to see that this type of a challenge has been effective for people, you know, not just me, but for other people as well. And so I'm excited for the rest of this year and feeling very inspired to kind of bring these types of workings with decks at a very personal, spiritual way forward again for us in new ways throughout this year. So please be looking forward to that as well, because I will be doing more of these types of challenges, but in different ways. Maybe not 4 or 5 weeks, because we have spent an entire month and a week really stepping into this solo energy with one deck. So I don't think we need to necessarily do them for as long of a time for the rest of the year, but I think there's definitely more intensive ways for us to be able to step into card work, and I'm excited to explore that in kind of mini challenges throughout the year. So I look forward to working with you all in that way. And I want to say to you all, thank you so much to those of you who have shared your stories. It's been wonderful to read them, and you are not alone on that journey as well. And please know that as well. Whatever you're going through, and whatever the deck you've chosen to work with has assisted you through or provoked you with over this past month, you're not alone in that experience either. And all of us have had our own deep, life-changing experiences in whatever way that happens to be over this past month. So again, thank you so much for participating in this with me, and let me know what you think of the decks that I'll be working with in February. Much love to you all. Blessed Imbolc to all of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
This is a look at my altar for Imbolc. This is my kitchen altar. So as you can see, as always, I'm working a lot with white howlite and jasper right now. These two stones are kind of foundations for me on my spiritual path, and I've found especially in the winter months I love working with these two stones, so you'll see a lot of that on the altar. But the decks that I'm really looking forward to working with and getting to know for the month of February, here is the Mother, oh, this is upside down. Here is the Mother Mary Oracle, and I am hoping to work with it in a similar way to the deck challenge. It's very extensive and in-depth, lots of journal work with this deck, because I think this deck has some important messages for me right now. So this is the Mother Mary Oracle by Alana Fairchild. This is the Myths and Mermaids Oracle deck by Jasmine Becket-Griffith. This deck has been hugely popular. It's one of our most sold decks at Made on Earth. And everyone knows that I love Jasmine Becket-Griffith's artwork. But I have had a difficult time connecting with this deck to the level that I typically do with Jasmine Becket-Griffith decks. And so for February, I'm committed to actually really spending a lot of time with this deck instead of just flirting with it and then getting sidetracked with the Sacred Rebels Oracle or the Journey of Love Oracle. So I'm really going to be focusing on working with the Myths and Mermaids Oracle deck and really getting to know it to see if we are meant to work together at a deeper level, or if really she's just a beautiful deck that I get to flirt with occasionally. But as you can see, she's got just beautiful, beautiful images in here, and all mermaids, which is wonderful. This is the famous Wild Wisdom of the Fairie Oracle deck. This is a steadfast part of my spiritual practice, and I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth back into this deck in a new way this year. And so she is on the altar now, kind of supporting us as well through the cold and, as you can see, the snow that we have had. Unending snowfall, it feels like, in January. Excuse me, sorry guys, I'm still getting over my cold. This is the Isis Oracle. As many of you know, this is my #1 favorite favorite oracle deck of all time. The guidebook is amazing, by the way. I work with Isis a lot, and this oracle deck is always on my altar. I have one on each altar in my house. These are stones from the ocean, and this is a piece of obsidian. No, I'm sorry, not obsidian, hematite raw, and this one is very grounding and protective, and it's one that I am happy to have on my altar right now. Just like the Isis Oracle, the Tarot of Vampyres is always on my altar, and I have one on each altar in my home, and I am excited to really sink my teeth back into working with tarot For the month of January, I only use tarot with clients. Excuse me, and I have really, really missed working with this deck. So I'm not going to show you any images because you all see me talk about this deck all the time. And I also have 2 ocean stones and a piece of bloodstone on this deck that really love to work with this deck, and it's kind of recharging right now for Imbolc. So some more sea stones and some carnelian. And this is a large piece of quartz that I picked up at a fair this fall, and some cactus, some desert rose selenite. So this is the Sacred Rebels Oracle that I have been working with in January and that I will continue working with. I have a feeling that this deck is going to be a lot like the Isis Oracle and be one that I work with constantly. I also have the Oracle of the Mermaids by Lucy Cavendish out. Again, another mermaid deck. I'm feeling a lot of water energy right now, and this is one of my favorite decks to work with in the spring. It came out around the time Vincent was born. He was born at the end of March, and so I have a lot of love for this deck, and it's one that I love to work with in February, March, April, and May, and into the summer as well. And as I mentioned in my review of the Wild Wisdom of the Fairy Oracle deck, the Wild Wisdom of the Fairy Oracle and the Oracle of the Mermaids deck mate together very well in the summer for me. So they're kind of getting back towards their love affair with each other right now. So for the rest of my altar down here, I have some blue lace agate. This is ice cream something. I can't remember the name of it, but isn't it gorgeous? I have my beeswax candles, and again, white howlite and red jasper. So these are some of the decks that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with in February. Also, not on this altar, but on my piano is the Journey of Love Oracle deck, and I will be working with that as well. And I am also very excited to work with the Ceccoli Tarot this month, and also the Japaridze, or however you correctly pronounce that name, Tarot, as well as the Tarot of the Night Sun, I believe. Guys, that deck's really interesting, and I have an interesting story about that deck as well, so I'll be talking about that more in February too. But I am sending you much love. I want to thank you all so very much for participating in the Solitary Tarot Solitary Oracle Monthly Challenge, and I look forward to working with you and the cards in February. Much love, and once again, blessed Imbolc, guys. Bye.